in Oxford. Not a bad journey from Warwick by car and then the park and ride bus. And we've just had our first visit to the Mathematics Institute to have a quick look at an exhibition that's been there for a little while by Kathleen Hindman, who was an Oxford-based artist who works connecting together nature, art and mathematics. So how are you finding it so far?
Well, I'm no maths expert myself, but I did certainly find some elements of it that I quite liked. I believe there was one on branches in a stream, I forget the exact title, and the rotation one, which wasn't a full rotation each time, but I'm sure there's some sort of code with the colours and background that you can work out later on, and obviously the Fibonacci paintings there, which I don't know how to visualise the Fibonacci sequence, but I'm sure to other people that'll be very fascinating.
What did you think of the colourful ones? Did you like them?
I think they are vibrant, but you can also kind of get the vision of where she's coming from, that nature, and kind of, even if it's just in squares or just, two-tone colours, it does kind of appeal to you. Sort of like a Warhol painting in a sense.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I think the one you mentioned was called Riverweed, and I noticed a lot of them had quite natural titles, even though they were really geometric, sciencey looking paintings. So it kind of gave you some clues, and one of the paintings, you could kind of tell it was in daylight, even though it was pixelated. That gave a sense of dappled lights and the mixture of greens and blues. It really felt like it was outside, even though it was very abstract.
Fantastic. It's lunchtime, so it's, a bit later than lunchtime, but there's a lot of people there eating their lunch. It's quite busy in the location at the moment. So, but what do you think about the idea of art in places like that?
Well, I got a sense, it definitely added meaning to it, knowing that there were people studying the subject around you, that it was a living subject.
And we can actually see students sitting right in front of those paintings actually doing what looked to me like hard maths. In fact, all maths is hard to me, because I'm from the arts faculty, but there you go.
I think, it's very innocuous. It's not doesn't take away from it, it's just kind of in the background. And I think in that sense that, Oxford's, probably quite known for elements of its natural beauty, whether, it's the architecture behind us there or actual green spaces. And so combining them together into what this department here studies, I think that's a wonderful idea, really. It's such a nice contrast that kind of works so excellently well that you don't really, you don't really think about it, but when you actually see it up close, it does work wonders.
Brilliant. Now, how did you feel about just walking into an Oxford department like that and surrounded by... It was a bit odd, wasn't it?
Yeah,
you're
not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the church, and there is this mixture of old and new here. Church and planting, and as we walked in, there were sort of sculptures of quite angular trees as well, which it sort of introduces you to concepts, and I think the paintings themselves introduce concepts as well.
Okay, and maybe the painting that helps, the fact there's art there makes you feel less alien, less of an outsider. Well, certainly makes me feel a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, and colour definitely has different connotations with life. There were lots of rainbow colour. One of the rotation-themed paintings was black and white, and the other one was very sort of primary colours. That kind of gave different feeling as well.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. So next we're going to head over to the Natural History Museum and the Pitt Rivers, which are right next to each other, again in amazing Victorian buildings. The architecture in itself is just incredible, and we'll have a look, actually make sure you notice things like the columns. So every column is a different rock from Britain, and there's sculptures of famous scientists all over the place and things like that. The Pitt Rivers, very different place. We'll see what you think of that. Okay, should we move on? Okay, so here we are in the Natural History Museum in Oxford, and I think we've spent over an hour here already. There's just so much to see. What do you think of it? What's your highlight so far?
I think for me it's going to be the crustacean exhibit there, which is just behind us. I mean, I've always seen king crabs on the internet, and you just don't see the size of it. I should put my hand up just to compare it to the torso. It's absolutely massive.
Yeah.
I think the way they show off all these exhibits in these new glass cases, it really does show the vibrancy, and I think it's much better than kind of flat on the ground. It's sort of in your face, you can get a better view of it. And I think the last thing as well is it's there's unique elements of you can touch certain exhibits, and they've also got some braille as well. And I think Oxford's done a very good job of kind of combining the traditional aspects of these museums. Big dinosaurs in the back, those are always a staple, but these newer ways to get people to immerse themselves in it, and I think that's really key to keeping museums alive in the 21st century.
Really, I saw you touching lots of the exhibits.
Yeah, because you don't get to do any of those.
Does that feel wrong, or do you kind of feel like straight away you could do that?
You get the shock, because it says, "Oh, please do touch." You think, okay, don't mind if I do. But I think that being there is just really nice, really unique, and but it still doesn't take away from the majesty of the place as well. And I just think it's utterly fascinating.
It was actually created in the first place. The Victorians created it as a teaching place, so you could come and actually get close to the artifacts and even handle them. So it's getting back to that, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing how the older style of display from the Victorian era is still here as well. So you get that contrast.
Yeah, it's still got that tradition.
Yeah, you see how it's developed, and now maybe the way we display things is giving a message about life cycle. Imparting education in a different way. I love the idea of scale that you get from the exhibits here. Like also you mentioned Stan. I love the way his tail whips around these gorgeous pillars.
I've been here so many times. I've never noticed that.
I didn't even notice that.
They've arranged the tail around.
It's like he's living in this space.
Yeah.
And over this side, there's a lot of different skeletons of mammals. Ranging, there's elk, reindeer, up to giraffe, and the different types of elephants. You get an idea of the comparison of scale between them.
Yeah, because you've seen the film Night at the Museum, because they come alive at night.
Obviously. Yeah.
It just feels like they might do, actually.
And didn't you feed somebody to Stan at some point?
Okay. It may be that somebody once put their child's head inside that jaw when they were very small. It's cruelty.
Well, they're alive, so they need feeding,
right?
Yeah,
that's good. Okay, brilliant. So, Pitt Rivers. Anthropology. Either scientific anthropology or the product of a totally insane Victorian collector. Okay, so Pitt Rivers Museum, what an amazing and possibly crazy place. What do you think of that?
Yeah, Pitt Rivers, it's very, a lot to get through, I'd say, is the main thing, and you really need to go in there with a plan to try and pick out where you want to go, know your route. Right. Otherwise you are just going to kind of be stood in wonder, and then there's come 5 p.m. and you've got to leave. Yeah,
just overwhelmed. You've effectively done a reconnaissance mission now. So what would you go back for next time?
I think I would probably see the animals and art section on the bottom floor. That was definitely a good part, because some of it is more simplified, but you can just see instantly what the animal is, and it reflects the culture of what materials they use, what they signify in that culture, perhaps. First floor is maybe a bit more. I've actually forgotten what's on the first floor.
Kind of textiles and things.
Textiles. The artwork and the beads.
Beads and artwork,
that was really impressive. And the weaponry, I think we should maybe look at the shields and the armour. I kind of focus more on the actual guns. Because
that's Pitt Rivers loved that kind of stuff. So he was a big collector of weapons and shields and all of that. From all over the world. So it really built on that. It is an odd collection, but then again, it represents human existence, which is odd
I
and diverse.
think the main thing that struck me is it's categorised based on the stuff it is, and they kind of lump them all together. They put like they were, Europe, Africa, Asia, whatever. But it is just kind of like all together. I think actually that's a good way to do it. You kind of compare it, just literally through your own. So you can just look left, look right. There you go. You can see there's some familiar aspects, but there's also some different ones there.
Fantastic, yeah. And were you disappointed not to see the shrunken heads?
I wasn't aware that was like
that was a big thing.
A selling point. Well, I wasn't aware of it, but I totally understand the reason behind it, and I think that's completely fair. It does kind of give a wrong impression. Like, if you look at those stuff on the bottom floor, that those animal artworks and stuff that it shows they're quite inventive. They're using the materials they have available to them. And I think that shows they have their own technology. It's a bit different to ours, but it has a similar meaning. So.
Fantastic. Yeah. So.
Well, I've been before, so like you say, I've done my reconnaissance and I just made a beeline for the Inuit clothing.
Telling us about that.
Yeah, you're going to
inside. This is, I'll just double check. It's made of parchment-like sealskin, so it's sealskin that's been prepared in a certain way, and it's got really fine stitching and embroidery. You can see these cuffs and multicoloured thread through it, and this neck that protects from the elements, and I believe the whole thing is waterproof as well, which is just gorgeous. So maybe you might relate it mainly to fur in your mind, what's seen more often, but there's all this embroidery and beadwork as well. It's amazing. And even the other things that I looked at on the ground floor related to that, so I found some bone items, and really interesting to see the commonality between different cultures around the world. A lot of divination, a lot of using all the materials of the animal hunting, like the Inuit clothing made of seal and intestine, and then I saw an engraved killer whale with this iridescent inlay from a medicine man's apron, and then that was from the Americas, and then in the same cabinet from somewhere in Africa there was bones for divination. So that was really nice to see next to each other.
So it tells us what we've got in common.
What we've got in common,
these different people,
and how the material world affects culture, and particularly interesting, like everything that we've seen sort of flows. So we've seen art and maths and rigid structure, and then coming to see natural history and the way that there's patterns within the natural world, to then more human history and the way that the natural world links to that. We'll get back down to maths somehow.
Right, well, this is what happens when you bring clever people to museums. That's really good. That's amazing. Yeah, fantastic. So what are you going to come back to see next time?
I want to know more about trade beads. I was fascinated to hear about, when I looked at the Inuit clothing, I saw all these beads and I thought, how did they have access to them? And then hearing about how Europeans traded with these. Probably quite cheap to make trade beads. I'd love to delve more into the history of that. So
those kind of trading connections all over the world, kind of global, that you wouldn't expect. That's amazing stuff. Actually, that's something I want to look for more. I've seen that in some other museums around the world, where, for example, in Southern Africa, from 17th century African villages where there are beads from China. It's just incredible to see.
And local culture then influencing bead production and what was then brought next time, and working out what local preferences are.
And people making it their own.
And then then creating their own garments out of it, and it then affecting their expression.
That's really interesting. Okay, so that's actually an interesting way of using the collection, making those interconnections, and to imagine teaching in that way as well. So going for those interconnections you wouldn't expect, but they're there and you can show them. That's really interesting.
And fascinating, the importance of art. The fact that trade beads could be used as a high value item shows just how much people really want decoration, really want expression.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Anything else to say Other than you had a good time?
Yeah, it takes a lot out of you. I
Yeah,
think.
it's exhausting, isn't it?
A
Yeah.
bit groggy.
Yeah.
This is why we've got nice cafe.
Yeah, this is essential, and the food here is really nice. It's so good. I had a chocolate thing, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the view.
For me, I think these two museums together are kind of like the ideal combination, and the facilities. I think it's a really good. I could spend a whole day here easily.
There's some great Hawaiian quilting in the
I
basement.
saw that. Yeah,
That's what
so
I've come back for actually. The
Yeah.
Hawaiian stuff, if it's still there, I kind
Yeah.
of skimmed over it a bit.
Yeah.
But I've always, liked aspects of Polynesian. But I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. So.
Yeah, so the temporary exhibitions have been brilliant over the years, and increasingly they're about getting the craftspeople, the people from these cultures, to curate and display themselves. Pitt Rivers has done brilliant work on post-colonial decolonising the museums and restitution and all that stuff. It's really a kind of leader in that field. And also diversity as well, so representing the diversity of humans in a more equitable way, and most importantly, overcoming its Victorian past, but without ignoring it. So, you still feel that the Victorian thing is there, Pitt Rivers is there, but they've modernised.
Well, there was a great display of postcards of sort of archetypal, stereotypical local people in traditional outfits, doing traditional things, and interspersed within them there's sort of someone in traditional dress holding a Coca-Cola bottle or a camcorder.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, great. So it can be relevant to the modern world, not just the past.
Yeah, and the way that people are presented through tourism and places like this, affecting your perception of those cultures.
Yeah. Of course, the artifact I keep showing people is this antelope sculpture from Botswana in early 20th century. It was collected right at the birth of tourism, and I have one just like it that I was given as a wedding present. You don't get these sculptures there anymore, so it might be that old. And it kind of raises questions about the kind of sculpture that existed before colonialism, and then how the birth of tourism, particularly in that area, Victoria Falls, changed things.